once you've decided the exact questions you're going to ask in a survey, you're going to end up having access to a lot of data. You need to make sure that your questions enable you to collect the information that you require, but make sure you don't collect too much. Don't end up with far too much data that you can handle. You must also collect it in a way that makes it manageable and easily accessible to you, and makes it easy to apply mathematical techniques to analyze the data that you have recorded. Unless you do this, it might be that the data has cost you a lot of money to collect, but it's not of very much use to you. Let's have a look at some ways how we can make sure that the data is manageable and then usable later. As an example, let's suppose you've been asked to carry out a survey to find the number of brothers and sisters that pupils in your school have. You decide to ask 50 people and you record the results below. So that's just 50 numbers and how many brothers and sisters each person you asked have. That is quite a lot of data collected. You've got all the information, but it's not really a very efficient way of storing and displaying this data. Let's have a look at a better way of doing this. Probably the most efficient way of collecting data of this kind is to use a tally chart. We use a tally chart to help us to both collect the data and to start to analyze it. So rather than collecting the data in this form, we would have used a tick sheet, and we'd have put little marks against each of the possible numbers of brothers and sisters, and when we get to the fifth one we use a bar through the 4 notches we've put down, so that we can very easily see groups of 5 numbers as we go through. This makes it very quick to collect the information, and it also makes it very, very quick to work out what numbers it is that we're dealing with. The tally system helps us to record results very much quicker than we would be able to otherwise. If we, for example, investigating the most popular colour of car that passed the school gates, it's easier to draw tally marks in a column than it is to keep writing down red, red, blue, blue, green, black, and so on. Also, by using the tally chart, the data is already collected into groups and doesn't require you to do any more work on it to get it into the groups. It's also very much quicker to pick out the numbers from the tally chart than it is in any other way. We would take our tally marks and transfer them into a table, and we would make this table a little bit more presentable than the tally chart. So we take the number of siblings in the first column there, we put the tally marks in the second column, and then we can very quickly write down the numbers that those tallies represent, because we can count up the 5s very quickly, and then obviously the units help us to do that. As each person answers the questions, you can put a tally into the appropriate box. So if you set yourself out ready with a tally chart, you'll find your data collection is a lot more efficient, and also your analysis of the data afterwards can be done in a lot quicker fashion. If we're collecting large amounts of data, another way that's going to help us is if we put that data into groups. This way we can produce what's called a grouped frequency distribution. An example when we might want to use this is when we're talking about people's ages. If you've got several hundred people that you're looking to take information from, you might end up with a large age range. So you don't want to have a column for every single one of those ages. You'd put them into groups. So for example, you might put the groups into ages of 0 to 9, 15 to 18, and so on. The specific groups you would use would be determined perhaps by the use that the data was going to be put to. So if you were doing a survey, for example, on what types of films a cinema might want to show, you would perhaps use the age groups that match up against the specific certificates that films could be, because that would help the cinema owner to work out which films to get in, because if they know that there are a large number of under 12s that come into the shopping centre every day, those are the films that those people will want to watch. As we can see from the tally chart, had we not grouped the data, we could have ended up with a very, very long list of ages against which we'd put small numbers of marks against each age. That wouldn't have helped us work out any information at all, and it would have made our job of analysis a lot harder. Of course, the other side of this is that you are losing data whenever you group it. So that's a possible negative that you need to bear in mind. You wouldn't, for example, from this piece of information be able to tell how many 45-year-old people there were, because that data is hidden in the group that's 40 to 49. So when answering questions of this kind as to how you should collect data, bear in mind that every method has a positive and a negative. The two main things we've looked at here are the idea of using tally charts, because that's a very quick and efficient way of collecting the data and helps us to analyze the data quickly afterwards, and grouping data, which means that we have a lot less different categories within which to put our tally marks. And we recognize that whilst there are positives to doing this, there's also negatives in that we lose the ability to extract some values from that information. We have to at each stage work out whether the positives outweigh the minuses. But you need to ensure that if you're answering a question that you put both sides of that case.